treat today to have a very special guest back in the studio with us here on the Public Square today. I'm Wayne Shepherd here with Dave Zanotti and Alan C. Duncan and Jeff Sanders. And we've got Dr. Chuck McGowen sitting right beside you, Dave.
Can you believe it? It's like a reunion. Now, I've already been criticized for making any statements that have anything to do with age or old. So I'll just say it's like a reunion of friends of many years.
Okay.
Friends of
All
many
right.
years. And we have so many new listeners, Chuck, since you have been with us last on the air. And we're really grateful for that because you've had a big role to play in the building of this broadcast by sharing with us your heart and your mind and your practice and your experience over many years. So it's a delight to have you in the studio. Now, the reason we've got you in studio today was nothing but relentless insistence because there is a new book that you can now find at Amazon called A 75-Year Journey. And the subtitle is Resulting in an Astonishing Career in Medicine by Charles McGowen, MD. And the reason that we are excited about this new work and another that's coming, and we want to talk about it today, is because Dr. McGowen is one of the 7 anchor authors of our library at the American Mission Center. And so when one of our anchor authors that is still with us on this side of things, because several of them have gone on to glory, some a long time ago. So when we get an opportunity for one of our anchor authors to come in and talk about something that was on their heart that created a new work, of course, we're going to take every opportunity. So Dr. Chuck, thanks for coming out and being with us today.
Well, thank you, Dave, for allowing me to be here. It's a great privilege. It's always a privilege to be on the public square. But this is a rather unique one because this represents a culmination of 75 years watching the, I hate to use the term, evolution of medicine. Mm-hmm. Because it has been an astonishing realization for me in retrospect, more or less. You know, I've always loved history. I've been a history buff, especially the Civil and Revolutionary Wars, Second World War for sure. And I've read a lot of David McCullough's works on. So I'm.
You're right next door to him in the library.
Yeah, well, it's only by alphabetical McGowen McCullough. But in any event, as I was looking back upon my career, I realized that when I was age 11, it was the first real inclination I had that I wanted to be a physician. Now, I'd thought about it off and on, you know, and they'd ask people, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? Most kids would say, oh, I want to be a cowboy or a policeman. But I'd always say, oh, I want to be a physician. I want to be a doctor. I didn't say physician in those days. In any event, it was at age 11 that one of the general practitioners in our neighborhood passed on, and the house that he practiced in was also the house he lived in, and that's the way a lot of general practitioners did it in those days. And his family sold the house and the property to a gasoline pumping company. I'm not going to name the name, but in any event, they took the house off its foundation and moved it down the street. And so that left a basement full of stuff. And so a buddy of mine and I went up there and started foraging through all of that.
At 11 years of age?
11 years of age.
You're down in the hollowed-out basement of this doc's former home and practice. Okay.
Yeah, well, in those days, we could travel around our neighborhood in 6 years old and circle the block and never be worried about anything. So there we were down in there digging around, and we found medicine bottles that had the ounces embossed on them.
Wow.
Yes. We found surgical instruments, hemostats. And
you can still remember this.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah, like it was yesterday. And so at that point, I thought to myself, you know, I would love to be involved in this kind of stuff someday. And it went from there to having my parents buy me a chemistry set and a little toy microscope that I could look at polywogs.
Did you blow anything up with the chemistry
No,
set?
fortunately I didn't.
Darn it.
I didn't.
What's the fun in that?
Well, had I done that, that would have ended my career in medicine. In any event, as Providence would have it, I moved on through grade school, and when I got to high school, I had been started in school in the mid-year, because in those days we had fall starts and winter starts, and therefore we had summer graduations and winter graduations. But our Board of Education did away with the mid-year graduation, and so I was entering the 9th grade, and I got the word that I was either going to have to move back to the previous class or move ahead to the next class. So I went to my guidance counselor and said, I'd like to develop a course of study to go to college. And she said, you want to go to college? And I said, well, yes, I want to go to college. And she said, well, what do you want to be? And I said, well, I want to be a doctor. She said, you want to be a doctor? And so I said, well, yes, I certainly do. And she said, well, you'll never be able to handle jumping ahead because you're going to miss study halls. You won't have any extracurricular activities and so forth. I said, please, let's just draw me up a schedule, and we need to have courses that will get me into college. And I particularly want to go to Hiram College in Ohio, which was academically tough to get into. And she said, you'll never graduate from college. Well, that settled it for me. and if you fast forward on that one, my first night as a surgical intern, interns in those days had to do the physicals on people going to surgery the next day. And when I was handed a chart to go to the first room, it was her.
No way.
Her?
The counselor.
The counselor.
And so I said to this nurse standing beside me, would you mind coming with me while I do the physical on Miss R? We went into the room, and the nurse said, Miss R, Dr. McGowen is here to do your preoperative physical exam. And she said, Dr. who? And she said, Charles McGowen? I said, yes, Charles McGowen, class of 53, Woodrow Wilson High School.
Chuck, that succinctly starts the story. Now, there are so many questions. So the year that you, let's see, what would be a good anchor year? Would it be from the year you started in practice or the year you actually went to medical school?
Well, getting into medical school was the goal. And so I would say that the success of the 75 years was when I started in medical school and after graduating from Hiram in 1957. So I started medical school in 57.
57. So we're talking about someone who's talking to us live right now. Now, look, please don't mistake my enthusiasm. My enthusiasm is based on the fact that it's hard to find somebody that is willing to talk about the medical industry who's lived in it since 1957. And that's why this book is so fascinating. Because Chuck talks about the things that he's discovered and the things that he has found that work and don't work, and he comments on the industry. It is a fascinating read. It really is. In a way, it almost feels like he's writing a book to talk to his kids after he's gone, and his grandchildren and his great-grandchildren. But in another way, he's talking to an industry that he loves and loves dearly and has given his entire life to. So Wayne, it is a most fascinating take, and we're going to get into some of these questions. And again, this is an unscripted conversation. We all have the book in front of us, but so far nobody's opened it. And we may get through this entire interview and tell you that we may never even reference the book directly because this is so heartfelt. And in regards to his life. Now, I've read it. I can tell you, my wife's read it too. We've talked about it a lot. So there's a lot to keep going on here.
And don't worry, we are going to give you the title again in a few minutes, give you a chance to get something to write it down with, because you're going to want to order a copy of this book, no question about it. Dr. Chuck McGowen with us on the Public Square. Stay tuned.
Spreading the light of liberty across the land. Now back to the Public Square.
Once again, thanks for listening to the Public Square today. We are delighted to have Dr. Chuck McGowen here talking about his experience all these years, decades as a medical doctor, and we've got much to learn from the stories. And Chuck, we just want you to keep going.
Wayne, I've got to tell you, and he doesn't like it when I say this, he never has, but I always say it anyways. Sorry, friend. If Marcus Welby was real, you would call him Chuck McGowen, because here is a gentleman and his wife who have walked through an entire dedication career as a mission in regards to American medicine. And I just, every time he tells me a story, I learn more. So let's get right back to it. Chuck,
please.
Medical school.
Yes. Well, I received a letter from having had my interview at the Ohio State University College of Medicine. I received a letter 10 days later saying that I had been accepted to medical school with one contingency, and that is that I had not yet had a course in embryology, but if I passed that course, I was in the freshman year of medical school. So that was great. That was around Thanksgiving in 1956. And then about the 1st of December, I got a letter from Hiram College saying that the course in embryology that I was to take would not be offered for the rest of the year because the professor who was to give the course had had a myocardial infarction and he would be out of work. And now that was bad news. So I called the college and I said, well, look, I need that course. I've been accepted to Ohio State, but I need that course, and I need to pass the course. I don't have a problem passing it. I just have a problem not being able to take it. And so I said, can I go to some other nearby college and take the course? And the guidance counselor there, another guidance counselor, said, well, we don't accept credits taken elsewhere during the senior year to be transferred back so you could graduate with your class. That's never been done before. And I said, well, never been done doesn't mean it can't be done. You've just set a tradition. There's no law against it, is there? And she said, well, I'll have to talk to the dean about that. And I said, well, if the dean won't let me talk to him, I want to talk to President Fall, who was president of college at that time. So she eventually, I got word that I could go to any nearby college. I could go to Mount Union, I could go to Westminster, or I could go to Youngstown College. At that time, it was a college. So that was good news. So the first week in January, when they were setting up registration, I went down to the college campus. And the other stipulation was from the university was that I would have to take a full load. I had to take 15 hours. I couldn't just take one subject like I could have taken it.
No reason to make it easy on you.
Right, exactly. Right. So what I did is I went through to sign up for 4 courses that I could use in my study of medicine. So I signed up for a chemistry course, a geology course, which I would later use writing books on creation, a psychology course, and a chemical literature course. And then I got into all those courses, and then I went to the chair where they were taking registration for embryology, and it said, class closed, filled up.
Oh, no.
So here we go. The next thing I did is I went to the dean's office. I didn't fool with guidance counselors anymore. I'm
picking up a pattern here.
Yeah, right.
Straight at the top.
I went to Dr. Smith's office, and he was the dean of the college, and I knew that he was a Hiram graduate. So I announced myself to his secretary, told her I was a Hiram graduate. I need to talk to the dean. She says, oh, he talks to Hiram graduates anytime. So I went into his office. He said, what brings you here, Chuck? And I said, well, here's the story. And I told him. And he said, oh, boy. He said, well, we've got to fix that. We're going in to see President Jones. And by the way, he's also a graduate of Hiram. Now, you talk about providence working in a boy's life. Providence, the hound of heaven, was chasing me. I had been fleeing him. I fled him down the nights and down the days. I fled him down the arches of the years. I fled him down the labyrinthine ways of my own mind and through the tears. And I was in tears now. I was in deep trouble. But we sat down with President Jones, and he said, we're going to fix this, Chuck. He picks up the phone, and he calls the professor of embryology, and by golly, I got in.
What was it like starting medical school at Ohio State University?
It was culture shock in many ways, because I'd come from a little town in Ohio, northeastern Ohio, called Hiram, with a student body of 500. And I went to this massive campus with a student body in 1957, it was only about 30,000. And the other culture shock was that at Hiram, I had been able to take one course at a time. It was called the single course study plan, where I'm going to be bombarded at Ohio State first year with anatomy, getting my own cadaver, biochemistry, histology, bacteriology, all at once. That was culture shock.
Now, you never have seen to be, in my years of knowing you, anything other than ravenous when it comes to learning. I just don't know that anyone could shovel enough at you that would actually max out your capacity. Were you that strong back then?
I had to be. I had to become ravenous. Yeah, it's kind of like when I was in the Air Force. This is in the book too. My commanding officer came to me and he said, "We've gotten a Twix down from Surgeon General's office that we must develop an hour lecture on the ill effects of tobacco on the human body."
This is the Air Force.
This is the Air Force. Okay. Yeah, I'm in there now, flight surgeon.
Right, you're a flight surgeon.
Yeah, okay.
Is this before the Surgeon General came out with its warning in the 60s?
That was the Surgeon General, Luther Terry.
Oh, wow.
Who put the thing on the pack that said, this can be dangerous to your health.
Wow.
So now the armed forces are the first testing ground, if you will, so to speak, and it comes to you.
It comes to me because here I am in a hospital of 22 physicians, and me, not a smoker. But I had just given it up during my internship because I developed an ulcer. That's providence. And that's providence. God's working there. Mm-hmm. I gave it up cold turkey, 2 packs of Camels a day.
Wow.
Yes.
Unfiltered?
The camels didn't have filters. Those were Winston's. Winston's had filters.
My grandfather was
Come
a
on,
World
Jeff,
War I
don't you know
sailor.
anything?
My grandfather smoked unfiltered camels his entire life. So
Okay, but you being a historian, you ought to know more about tobacco. Anyway.
C.S. Lewis also smoked unfiltered cigarettes as well, so you're in good company.
And a pipe. All right. Did you ever smoke a pipe?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
A meerschaum.
high class.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway,
The order comes down.
What
are you supposed to do?
Well, so my commander said, "You're the only one besides a pediatrician who doesn't smoke, and I'm not sending a pediatrician out to deliver messages to all these base operations." So he said, "You've got to prepare an hour lecture with slides." And I said, "I have two problems, Colonel." And he said, "What are the problems, Captain?" And I said, "Number one, I haven't the slightest idea what the ill effects of tobacco are on the human body. They didn't teach us that in medical school." He says, You're right, they didn't.
Wow.
"But you've got 2 weeks off to go to the library, and Surgeon General has sent 2 cartons full of literature on the ill effects of tobacco. You will learn that literature."
Thought you were going to say 2 cartons of cigarettes, but go ahead.
No, yeah, that's close. So anyway, he said, "What's the second problem?" And I said, "Sir, I am not a public speaker." He said, "No problem. You will become one." And that's providence.
Wow.
Because how would I get to be doing what I do now if I'm not a public speaker?
Wayne, this story gets better and better and better.
Yeah, we are hearing a few stories from a 75-year journey resulting in an astonishing career in medicine. And that's the title of the book, A 75-Year Journey by Charles McGowen, MD. So if you're looking it up online, are we sending people to Amazon to get this book, Dave?
Yes, easiest way to get it still is Amazon at this stage in the game. And you won't be sorry. I can tell you won't be sorry. When you get the book in your hands, it's a smidge daunting because it's not a little book, but it's not a giant book. I will tell you, my wife
75 years takes a while to tell the story.
It takes a while to tell the story. I actually, Wayne, had the privilege of getting in on reading this book before it was published. So he had me at hello.
Well, you wrote the preface as well. Did we mention that?
Oh, okay. Yeah, but that too. All right. Which was an honor beyond imagination. But yes, so Amazon's the place to go, and there's more stories coming.
Look for A 75-Year Journey. All right, coming back on the Public Square in a few moments.
Spreading the light of liberty across the land. Now back to the Public Square.
Our special guest today on the Public Square is Dr. Chuck McGowen, our longtime friend. Chuck, you were at the beginning of the American Policy Roundtable, weren't you?
Very, very much so. Yes. Yeah. I've been hanging around for about 25 years.
Okay.
Actually, it's even longer than that.
It's longer than that, right?
He's one of those people that I had in the Rolodex from my high school years that I went back and said, "Hey, Chuck, I'm doing something. Can you lend me a hand?"
Oh, wonderful.
You knew Dave Zanotti when he was a teenager?
I did.
17.
Tell us more.
50 years ago.
That's a whole nother book.
That's a whole other book, Jeff.
Get started now.
All right. Thank you, Wayne, for saving me. Let's go with Chuck. You've got one of the things about this book that I find interesting is Chuck explains in ways that we can understand. Now, there will be some dictionary pursuit in this book. He breaks it down, way down to the lowest shelf. But even at the lowest shelf, there's some reaches. You may have to pick up a dictionary or say, "I don't understand that word." Maybe he'll explain it later. But the point is that Chuck never insults us by saying, "You should know this stuff," because maybe you don't. He invites us up. That's what he always does in his writing and in his teaching. He invites us to come up. And so he's talking to the industry of medicine about things that have changed dramatically and technologies that have come that he witnessed with his very eyes coming onto the field for the very first time. Chuck, you've got a great chapter in there.
Yes, well, each chapter deals with the progression in different disciplines of medicine. And in the chapter on the advances made in radiology, radiology, put in simple terms, is X-rays. Okay, so I begin that chapter saying that, well, it all began with a fluoroscope in a doctor's office before they went to hospitals to get real X-rays. All right. So in that chapter, I was explaining how the X-ray progressed to a CAT scan, progressed to an MRI, and then we had ultrasounds and all this sort of thing. Okay. And I also explained that it was my practice to always go down to the radiology department to look at the films that had been taken on my patients that were hospitalized. And on this particular Sunday morning, I went down to look at a chest X-ray on a patient that I had admitted with pneumonia several days before, and I wanted to see how the pneumonia was progressing on film. I'd heard how it was progressing in the lungs, but I wanted to see it on film. So I went down there and I looked into the radiologist's office, and he was sitting there, both hands up to his face, and he just looked like he was crying. So I walked in and I said, "You all right?" And he said, "Not terribly, Chuck." And I said, "Well, what's the matter?" He said, "Well, did you hear what happened last night?" And I said, "I haven't looked at television, heard the radio, or read a newspaper today." He said, "Well, the entire Marshall football team crashed last night coming back from a football game in North Carolina, and everyone was killed." And he said, "My roommate was the team physician, my roommate in medical school." And I said, "Oh, my goodness sakes, I'm so sorry." And he said, "Yeah." And he said, "I'm not really supposed to be here today, but John so-and-so developed the flu and asked if I would take his weekend call." And I said, "Oh, okay." He said, "I was supposed to be on that plane." Yeah. And that is the kind of story I weave in and out of the difficulties that you might be developing in these chapters, okay? Because there's a story in every chapter, all right?
So we go through these different divisions of observing how medicine has changed. Chuck, give us some context, stuff that we have today that, now, of course, obviously, it's pretty obvious we didn't have in 1957 when you started medical school. But what are some of the biggest surprises to you of things that we have today that if someone had told you in 1957, you'll be having an interview after 75 years and it'll look like this?
Okay. For example, let's take two pharmaceuticals, an antibiotic and blood pressure medicine. In 1957, we had 4 antibiotics that we used: penicillin, sulfa, streptomycin, which was most commonly used in combination with penicillin. It was called Penstrep, and chloramphenicol. 4 antibiotics. Now, today, we have scores of antibiotics, okay? All right. And of course, penicillin was rather new to the general public in 1957 because it was not allowed to the general public until World War II was over, because though it was discovered by accident, by the way, by a guy who was studying a mold called penicillium, and was also studying streptococcus in the same lab. He went on vacation for a week and came back, and somehow there was a cat that roamed around in his laboratory, and the cat had dumped the penicillium into the streptococcus and killed all the streptococcus.
Sir Alexander Fleming?
Yes, Alexander Fleming. You're right. So, but that was in around 19.
You got to get this book, okay? You just got to get this book.
So this was in about 1928, but they didn't really develop it for general use until 1940, and then they released it to the general public. But then they pulled it back because in 1941. Now we're in war. Yeah. So they were saving it just for soldiers.
Just for soldiers.
Yes.
So it didn't come onto the market till after the war.
Right.
Wow.
So it was rather new when I went into medical school. Penicillin was rather new. And now look what we've got. Okay, so the other thing that I told you were blood pressure pills. Well, we only had 3 types. When I say types, where they work in the body. A diuretic works on the kidneys, lowers the blood volume, which also lowers the blood pressure. Okay, a vasodilator works on the peripheral arterioles, increases the volume in the blood, therefore decreases the pressure. And then the central acting one works on the brain, to lower your blood pressure. So we had 3 types, but we only had 1 blood pressure pill in each type. Now we have around 10 types, and we've got 10 blood pressure pills in each type.
Wow.
So we've gone from 3 blood pressure pills in 1957 to 100 blood pressure pills in 2022.
And each of these bespeaks a different form of therapy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's just in the realm of pharmaceuticals, and we're only talking about 2 drugs in 2 areas. Yeah. That is absolutely incredible. Now, tell us more. Actually, we're going to have to take a break here, Wayne. Here's where I want to go with this. When we come back, I would like to spend the remaining time in this broadcast on things that didn't go so well. Maybe were well-intended, but didn't go so well. If we could change something, what would we do?
Yeah. We often learn important lessons in those circumstances, don't we? Well, we're learning today from Dr. Chuck McGowen. His book, A 75-Year Journey, is available on Amazon. And, of course, you can read more about it on our website as well, thepublicsquare.com, aproundtable.org.
We will be right back for more on The Public Square.
I don't know how else to describe today's conversation except a very special conversation on the Public Square today with our good friend, Dr. Chuck McGowen. Dave Zanotti is here, Alan Duncan, Jeff Sanders is here. And Dave, back to you.
This will go into the classic file, Wayne, the Hall of Fame on the Public Square, because it's going to be such a oft-listened to piece. Chuck, we talked a lot about, or we're going to be talking about things that have gone wrong in medicine, in the industry, or things we could reroute if we could, or we should change going forward. But things don't just go wrong in the medical industry. Things go wrong in doctors' lives.
Yes, and what went wrong was basically my fault. And what went wrong was that my wife became critically ill and nearly died from ulcerative colitis. Now, let me bring us up to that. First of all, I've talked about providence already. And one of the most providential things in my life was meeting Kay when she was 13 and I was 15.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And through that meeting, I got involved in a youth group and a Bible study group taught by a beautiful little old Christian lady in her church. And I started getting more and more interested in spiritual matters at that time. Now, we fast forward to 1956. We were engaged, waiting on the news from Ohio State. I got the news that I was being accepted to medical school. I knew I was going to be graduating from Hiram in 57, But now we're going on to medical school. You know what? We're going to get married. So we got married in December of 56. All right. Now, up to this time, she was my total focus outside of education. Okay, you got that?
Understandable.
Okay, so, and she was used to that focus. All right, now I get into medical school, and a lot of pressure on me to excel. Okay, and along comes our first child. Now, on top of that, I had to start working while I'm going to medical school. Okay, I had to my quarter off, I worked in the hospital. All of my focus now is on education and work, and her focus is on raising a child. Well, then 14 months later, another child comes along. Okay, at the same time, she's working as a nana for some of the medical students whose wives were working and they had children, so she was babysitting. That brought money into the house too. My wife is a hard worker, and she's always been a hard worker. And so anyway, as this progresses, then I get into my internship, and 24 hours on, 12 hours off, 24 on, 12 off for that internship year. Then we go into the Air Force, and life is wonderful. We got a lot of money coming in. But then I go back out of the Air Force, and I do go into my medical residency, and now it's back to the old grind again. And we were just being driven further apart by different interests. And it got down to the point where she was going to file for divorce. And on the day that she was to file for divorce and see the attorney, start signing papers, she became critically ill and had to go into hospital. And at that time, I was fishing in Canada, which was another selfish thing for me to be doing instead of being at home with her. And so anyway, I came back from Canada to find her hooked up to 4 IVs and a nasogastric tube in her nose, and they said she had a 50% chance of making it, and if her bowel ruptured, she would die. Okay. So I went about praying for God to intervene there. I didn't know whether God was hearing me or not, but I went about praying. And my sister-in-law, who was devout Christian, sent her pastor in to talk to Kay, and he led her to Christ. Later in the afternoon, another pastor came in, sent by a neighbor, and he wanted to pray for healing for Kay, which he did, and he left a book on the bedside stand entitled The Christian Secret of a Happy Life, written by Hannah Whittle Smith, a little Quaker lady, written in the 19th century. And when I looked at that title, I knew, first of all, I wasn't a Christian, because I did know Christians, and I knew I wasn't like them. And second of all, I wasn't happy. Now, if you'd have looked at me, I had everything going in my favor, you know. I should have been happy, but I wasn't. I was miserable. And now I know why I was miserable, is because God had set me on a path providentially and gotten me through purpose number one in life, and that was to become a physician, to help people. And the second purpose I had not yet realized, and that was to be a teacher of God's Word and to be a speaker for God, which, well, I'd learned to be a speaker. I hadn't learned to, and I'd learned to be a teacher of medicine, but I didn't know anything about God. I just knew I wasn't Him. And so Reading that book, I prayed to receive Christ. And from that point on, everything began to change in our marriage, in our family. I began to teach. I started teaching my family the Bible.
What happened to Kay?
Kay was totally healed. Totally healed. Let me just say that the surgeon, when he looked in those days, we did not have flexible colonoscopes. We had 12-inch long steel round sigmoidoscopes. Oh. And he looked in there and he said, Chuck, her bowel has to come out. It'll never heal. And I said, Bert, my friend, it's going to heal. And he looked at me as though I were crazy. He said, you know better than that. You've got more brains than that. I said, yeah, but I've got something else I didn't have before, and that's faith. So let's leave the bowel in there and see how my faith works. 2 weeks later, she's still in the hospital now, but he looks into the bowel and he said, it's healed. And he sent her home.
Great stories. Chuck, I like what you said earlier. I can't remember if it was on mic or in a break that you said there's two halves to this book. The first half is before Christ, and the second half is after your decision to follow Christ in faith. So I think it's a great description for a book, Dave.
We can also hear more from Chuck on your program, Wayne. You interviewed Chuck on First Person.
Well, I'll have to look up the link. I know it's still online, but Chuck, you and I talked about your testimony, maybe 12 years ago or so. You were one of the first guests I ever had.
Is it really that long ago? Alan, let's get that up and let's get it onto our files as well. I also want to tell you, Wayne, that there is, and all of the listeners of the Public Square, I want to mention that Chuck is a contributing author, not just to the American Mission Center's library where this book will go, but he's also a part of the AP Roundtable website.
Yes.
The American Policy Roundtable's website at aproundtable.org. We have captured much of Chuck's thinking on where American medicine missed the mark and how it could get back on trail and get back moving in the right direction. We're going to run out of time in this hour, I can tell you right now. We're going to touch on that in just a few minutes. But we're probably going to have to go into overtime and everything else. But we've got a lot of good information from Chuck. But then there's also one other thing before we close out on this program. I've got a note I got to make. One other point I got to bring up. So Wayne, when we come back, let's get more from Dr. Chuck.
All right, for some of you who have to leave us now, the rest of the program can be heard online as always with our smartphone app and at thepublicsquare.com.
Spreading the light of liberty across the land. Now back to the Public Square.
And we're back with you on the Public Square today. This is a program you'll want to share with others, I'm sure. And you can share the link, thepublicsquare.com. And for this week's episode, you can also share the program through our free smartphone app, The Public Square, available in your app store. Okay, a few more minutes with Chuck McGowen on this edition of the Public Square, Dave.
One of the great observations, learning how American medicine has changed, medicine in the world has changed, and how Chuck has had an eyewitness account of that. He's right on the front lines. Is we've spent many days together in the policy arena on places where American medicine was getting off the track. We can go back to Hillary Clinton's Health Security Act and the debacle of Obamacare and then the trauma of COVID. Chuck has been with us through all those days, and we've always been able to count upon him to help us, to connect us with people. And Chuck, there are good lessons about all of those things in this book, and as well as at the website at aproundtable.org. If you had the magic wand and you could fix some things in American medicine, where would you start?
With prayer. the things that are so wrong are almost unfixable. I started to see a marked change in medicine in 1965 when Medicare and Medicaid became the law of the land under the Johnson administration. I was part of a group of physicians who were lobbying against that because we thought it was going to destroy a basic fundamental principle of supply and demand, which is what capitalism's built on. And if we were going to go to this socialistic type of program, it was not going to be good for America. All right, so the result of that, let's take Medicare first of all.
Which you're on.
Well, certainly.
And everybody over 65 has to be.
Exactly.
Okay.
So they said that all of our patients 65 and older had to be on Medicare. And the other thing is that we had to do a physical exam on them once a year, and that we had to order all the labs and all the x-rays and those sorts of things on them that they wanted, not that they needed. And so basically it took the cost of medicine. When Medicare started, my office call was $10. When I left the practice of medicine and in 1999, my office call was only $25. But, now office calls, just for a general practitioner, the first start is $100. All right. Now, that all came about because of two things. First of all, the demand that physicians do what they didn't need to do.
From an outside agency.
Right.
Government agency, I might add.
And most people age 65 in those days had grown up in the Depression. And they knew that they didn't have to go to the doctor for every sniffle and snort. And so consequently, here they come into the office for everything. I mean, I've got gas. I got a lot of gas, doctor. Or, I've got a pimple on my nose. I mean, and you just had to just go all out for these people. Okay. Now, the other thing is that you could not order, under the new Medicare rules, you could not order an outpatient study like a barium enema or a GI series. You had to admit them to the hospital. Now we got people going to the hospital, and the hospital's going to start making money. And everyone that went into the hospital had to get an EKG. They had to get this blood test and that blood test, and they had to stay so many days. And
it kind of reminds me as a parallel of what happened with college loans. As the college loan thing became the government's way of saying this is how we're going to work college in America, all of a sudden tuition prices went up, debt went up. Colleges started building new things because there's an outside hand now in the marketplace.
All right. Now, not to be unkind to the Democratic committees under Johnson, let's move fast forward to Richard Nixon's administration.
Which wasn't a whole lot different from the Democrats in many ways.
But
just so everybody understands that.
What Johnson ordered, now Nixon wants to clean up the mess. But how's he going to clean up the mess? Because
wage and price controls.
Well,
I remember it.
Well, but he's saying the cost of medicine has soared. It's ridiculous. Those doctors, we've got to put them on a leash.
So more government is going to solve the problem that government created
in the first place.
Yeah. So now they come after us. We weren't making more money. Okay. As a matter of fact, we were making less money because our malpractice went up because so many people were getting tests that they didn't need, and they were going after what are called incidentalomas. They did this test and they found this little spot, that was nothing, and they went after that spot.
Do you call that incidental omas?
Yes.
I've never heard that term before. See,
like
the
a-
man
like a
never
sarcoma.
stops teaching me things.
Well,
incidental omas.
It's a fraternity term.
Yeah, I got it. It's a good one. Now, what's intriguing about this conversation, Wayne, is we've just opened a portal from which you can begin to see all the mistakes. I mean, we could go into managed care and HMOs, but it all started when the outside agency came in and said, "This is how we're going to do it," and they brought the federal checkbook with them.
We're here to help. So the
we're
federal
from
government.
Washington, and we're here to help.
Now that was as if old-timers like me weren't getting proper medical care before Johnson said, we're going to give them Medicare. That's nonsense.
Yeah.
They got the care they wanted, but they didn't want everything. You see? I mean,
now it's free.
Look, the first time I ever went to a physician was for my college entrance exam at age 17.
Wow.
Now, I will say I had to get a couple sutures because I had some accidents, falling off a bike and stuff, but never went for a cold. My mother treated me for my colds, and we didn't even go buy cough medicine. My dad mixed bourbon and honey and lemon.
Little lemon, yep.
Yeah. It was the bourbon that did it. But anyway.
Christian radio here, folks. Just reminding everybody.
So, Chuck, we could go on and on. And the good news is there's a book. The good news is there is a book that will take this story from here. And I want to put sort of just a little bit of an emphasis on the conversation we just had, because you look at all the different things that are happening in medicine today that are troubling. Doctors sitting behind computers, not even touching or looking at patients any longer, but looking over the screen and trying to build relationships. The chaos in the processes that we have. The
no house calls.
No house calls. House calls. Chuck, what was a house call?
Yeah.
No, most people don't even know what that means.
Marcus Welby did house calls.
What was a house call?
Chuck McGowen did house calls. The day I retired, I did a house call on a 99-year-old woman who had been making house calls on for 7 years, okay? And that was my last house call. Oh. But I went to her 100th birthday party.
Oh, wow. That's wonderful.
Good job, Doctor.
Wayne, we got it. It's hard to stop, but we've got to.
I know. Where do you stop telling these stories contained in this book, a 75-year journey resulting in an astonishing career in medicine by Dr. Charles McGowen, our guest today on The Public Square. It's available on Amazon. You know what we think of the book, and I think you'll love it when you read it as well. Chuck, thank you. God bless you, man.
Thank you, brother.
Same to you.
We appreciate you so much.
The Public Square is a broadcast service of the American Policy Roundtable.